Kia ora and welcome to F.T.P-PODCAST. No, it's not what you think. We're actually here to free the people. My name is Dion Freeman and I'll be your guide and host as we go on this epic journey together, discovering ways that we can free the people. Today, really excited to welcome on David Ring, and you might have seen him on the BRINK Podcast. So, hey David, how you going, brother? Welcome.
I'm really good. Thank you for having me. I'm not sure why you wanted me, but here I am.
Why we wanted you on this podcast, I'm new at this, is because I'm new at this. And you guys have had a real successful run with the BRINK, and I've been watching episodes and it's blown me away. So tell us what the BRINK's about.
Well, that's a really good question, and I'd love to know the answer myself. The BRINK is, so for a little bit of a background, so the BRINK's an episode that I co-host with my friend, who a lot of people back in New Zealand would know, Matthew Ridge. You know, famous for sports and rugby and league and all that sort of stuff. And Matthew's a great mate of mine, and we met through his daughter Jamie, who's an older friend of mine. And he and I guess on paper you would say, an unlikely set of friends. Matthew's this very sort of alpha, dominant, strong-willed individual, and I'm a gay guy. And so, on paper, it really makes no sense at all. However, for whatever reason, we have a really, really great connection. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we just, I think we've always felt a lot like outsiders. And, from the moment we met, we were able to go really, really deep on conversations. And I think when you meet somebody else who has always felt like they've always been on the periphery a little bit, sometimes it can be a painful place to be. So you have a lot of empathy for somebody who's like that, and so you enter engagement with a lot less judgment than you maybe normally would. So we've always been able to go really, really deep, talk about anything, and just have a really open and great friendship. And one day Matthew was like, "Fuck, David, we talk." I just said I wasn't going to swear, but I'm going to swear. Anyway, Matthew was like, "David, we spend so much time talking, shooting the breeze, talking absolute rubbish. Let's record our conversations. Let's make a podcast." I was like, "Have you ever listened to a podcast, Matthew?" He's like, "Nope." I was like, okay. Interesting concept. I'm deeply shy in private, and you have no experience in this field, but okay, let's do it. And it was one of those things where I was like, we do talk a lot of stuff, and we do get a lot of benefit out of being able to just share and be open with each other. So why not? And we're super inquiring with this heaps of stuff, we're interested in. We know very little, and we just thought, we'll go on a bit of a journey and just see where it goes and have a laugh. And it's kind of like therapy for us. And, the more we get into it, the more people we're talking to, a diverse range of people. It's getting more and more interesting, and we're learning so much on the go. And I think we're actually helping people. And from the beginning, our motto has been, we only want to put good out into the world, which I'd like to think we're doing. So there's nothing negative out there. I guess the only negative is the way we interact with each other, but that's just our personal friendship style. So what the BRINK is about, it's really hard to nail down. I guess the crux of it, it's about human connection, and we see a dire lack of it in this modern world. And we certainly have got an enormous amount of benefit out of our friendship, and seeing that, connection can come in all forms, whether it be, mates, it can be romantic, it can be, an old person and a young person, an adult and a child, it can be an unexpected sort of connection, yet it can be deeply enriching. And I think passing that on for us has been a really, really good thing. So we touch on lots of things, whether it be, I am an alcoholic. I haven't drunk for 15 years. Matthew's had his own journey with substances and things like that. We talk a lot about that. I'm ADHD. Matthew doesn't think he is. He is. I'm no psychologist, but so we talk about, an enormous array of things like that. Yet, we have no grounding or professional training or anything like that. So we get people on who can explain and go deeper on that. And we come to them with a lot of really simple questions, but sometimes simple questions are the best ones. I know when I watch podcasts or listen to podcasts or watch shows, like I don't have the bandwidth to ask the heavy technical questions. I want to know the simple stuff. So that's what we're doing, and hopefully people who watch and listen to us can kind of come along for the ride and learn with us, because we're certainly learning a lot on the go, changing our opinions a lot, and just broadening our worldview.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. I was like, when I first heard it, so we got introduced through one of our first guests, Daniel Fairbrother, and from Answers Within, and he was like, "Oh, it's a podcast called The Brink," and I was like, straight away, I was like, Matthew Ridge, it's got to be like the brink of insanity or something like that. And then
The
I
abyss.
realized, like, you're on the brink of discovery, of self-discovery, but also what else is going on in the world with real people.
Exactly. And I also think there's that thing of like so many people, we have been on the brink of annihilation, destruction, literally the abyss, and have pulled ourselves back, whether it's been through our own hard work or people around us have pulled us back. We haven't teetered over yet. That's not to say we may not. With some wood I can touch. But it's there's that the by the grace of God go I sort of thing. It can always happen. But there's a lot of that as well, being on the edge and looking out into oblivion. And what's that saying they say about, if you look into the abyss, you never know who's going to be looking back at you, that sort of thing. So it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So, dude, I've got a few, I don't know if they're simple questions, but they're like, so the whole point of FTP podcast is free the people, and the different ways that my guests have freed themselves. But also every one of my guests has gone through hono sessions. So
Yeah.
you and Maddie had distance sessions. So you're in France, I'm in Aotearoa, New Zealand. How was that experience for you? And did you notice any benefit for yourself?
Yeah, well, so for my experience, like I'm really open to that sort of stuff, and I've done healings and all that sort of stuff before, and I've always been interested in spirituality and things like that, not with a great deal of understanding, but was wanting to learn more. And some of the stuff I've done, I've been like super skeptical. I'm generally more skeptical and cynical in life per se. But I always go into these things with a really open mind and a hopeful mind. And also, I've got a bit of like, ancestry or um, relatives who were more into the spiritual stuff. And I've always been like, I wish I was born with that. Like, I'd love to be more tapped into it. So I'm super open to it. But I always feel like I'm not like anointed, or it's not been tapped on my head that I would naturally get the sort of stuff. But I'm always like hoping that maybe a door will open and I'll be like all of a sudden psychic, or like like just more in tune and things like that. And for me, I went in and I guess I let it just sort of unfold, right? My session with you was really, for me, sitting back and being, I guess, guided by you. And heaps of stuff came up, and I found the session super relaxing. Like, I could feel as you went through it, all the stuff that came up. There was so many things we talked about, or that you really talked about, because I didn't do too much speaking about things going on in my life, things in the past, those sorts of things that came up, and I could feel energy moving in my body, which, even as I say that, sounds a bit strange, but I could literally feel energy kind of pouring off me. And there was an enormous lightness for quite some time after the session. Lots of questions as well, but lots of confirmation. And the one big thing that I did notice, and Matthew did on the same day, at the end of the day, we were both shattered, like super, super shattered. Like, it was draining. But the more interesting part of the experience for me was was your reactions, your physical reactions to the experience, I guess. When we're talking about my experiences, my traumas, so to speak, how that sort of affected you. And I think it made me realize that there's a lot going on, or that has gone on for me, that was heavier than I thought that it had been. So it made me kind of look inwards even more at things that maybe I discounted in the past.
Yeah. And so for did you notice benefits in the days after?
Yeah, absolutely. There was like a general introspection, but and also a lightness too. And I think just a clearing of the mind, and the ability to process things that maybe I've been stuck on previously or historically. So it kind of created a bit of space. It also, I guess, brought up other things that I wanted to then start thinking about or processing that I weren't really on my radar before. So it made me busier in other ways. But no, there was absolutely nothing negative about it. It made me more inquiring.
Yeah, so a lot of people find, especially this medicine, confronting. So was there anything that you felt that was confronting that you sort of had to chip away at for yourself, or like things that you want to work on now?
Yeah, for sure. That there always is something confronting when you're looking inwards, I guess, and especially if there's somebody like yourself who's picking up on things that you're not necessarily offering forward yourself. And once those things come up, you're like, well, that person has seen that part of me, or they've seen that thing that I thought was locked inside me in secret. So it must be a real thing. So I can leave it there to fester. There's that, damn it, I'm not hiding it that well, or it's really inside eating me up. So it kind of, I guess it's like kind of like holding a bit of a mirror up and deciding whether you keep looking at it or look away. We'll do a bit of this.
Yeah.
Bit of both.
And so we spoke about swearing, but that's the first word that sort of comes to mind. And like nobody's above it. Like when I get treatments from my students, it's double that because I'm their teacher and now they know these intimate parts of me. So it has that definitely like looking in the mirror, looking at them, seeing what they see.
Yeah,
But
it's that's confronting, but I think it's also super freeing too, because things we keep inside keep us heavy, right? And whether we like them coming out or not, when they do, eventually, like, it feels so much better. And it also lightens things too, in terms of, when you speak something into the world, it tends to be a lot less scary when you hear it verbalized than when it's rattling around in your head at 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, definitely. And like the value outweighs the confronting parts for me, and gives me somewhere to launch from, like into not the next things, but like, yeah, I think you said it before, making space for the new.
Yeah, exactly. We've been talking a lot about, and it always comes up because we deal with things like, drug addiction or alcoholism, or say child sexual abuse, or lots of really heavy things. And often you want to, like, the human instinct or the go-to is you want to give some people advice, right? Even if it's, just a friend, you want to give them your opinion. You want to say, well, this is what I would do, this is what you should do. But I think what we're learning is that sometimes people, the last thing you should be doing is giving your opinion, because you might not know what that person needs at the time. You don't understand the full context. The advice you give might set them on the wrong path. And I think giving people the ability or the space, and that sounds super airy-fairy, to just like voice stuff into the world, when they hear it, they often, more usually than not, will actually come to the correct conclusions by themselves. So if you can just be a sounding board, that is a lot better, and often, I think, less damaging, potentially damaging, than actually trying to give people advice.
Yeah. Now I always teach my students like to tell them what we're feeling, but then to lead with questions so that they come to those conclusions themselves. So, no, very, very powerful message in there, bro. So, I wanted to. We had an interesting sort of pre-chat, and so you kind of ruined the surprise and came out of the closet early, right? Bull out of the gate. But I wanted to just speak on sexuality because I still work on people who are going through this, and not so much that I'm wanting you to give them advice, but maybe they can find some comfort in the journey that you had with coming out.
Yeah.
So would you like
What
to
do you want
talk
to
us
know?
through that? Bro, what we discussed previously was, like how you didn't want anything to change, um, how, you were still just stuck into your sports. So talk us through that. Like, how was it for you coming out, and how was the reactions of your loved ones, your friends, your parents?
Okay. That's a big topic, but it's a good one. And it's also one that's like, we hear a lot about like sexuality, and that's a big conversation these days, and sometimes I'm just like, fuck, I'm sick of hearing about it. So like, imagine what people who who aren't gay or whatever, having shoved down their throats the whole time, they must be like, oh, stop bleating about it. But I think it's a big and important conversation, so I'm happy to talk about it. So like, I'm 40, how old am I? I'm nearly 46. I think I must have been like 22 when I came out. But I always knew, I think, from my earliest memories, that knew I was gay. And as a child, who knows what that means exactly, because there's no concept of sex or anything like that, but there's an understanding or intuition of attraction, and just, I think, always knowing that, and always equally knowing how much I didn't want to be that way. So like, really disliking your natural self. And that wasn't even as a child because I'd heard negative things or whatever. I just, you see the world and you see how it's supposed to look, or you think it's supposed to look. There's, like a mum and a dad, or boyfriends and girlfriends, and those sorts of things, even as young as like 3 or 4, and just knowing that, well, thinking it's wrong because it's different, right? And just wanting desperately not to be different. And so growing up, hating that, suppressing that, and I guess, I don't know whether this sounds cowardly or not, but like, my intention was always just like, ugh, I will just push it down and I guess maybe hope it goes away, knowing that it never would. But I always had girlfriends, and like, always just assumed that I would just fake my way through life, right? I just assumed that I'd like live a lie, which was like fairly disappointing view of the world or the future to come. But I was like, well, there's no other options. I'm never coming out. I don't want to be like that. I don't want that to be my life experience. But as you become a teenager and you become sexually active and things like that, like, I had girlfriends, and that all went well, and I had a great time doing that, and everything worked fine. So I was like, yeah, this will be what it'll be. Then when I got, I guess, like 18 or 19, maybe a bit older, that stopped working, like the ability to be like functional sexually with women. And I was like, fuck, I'm not going to be able to fake this. So it was like a really cowardly way, I guess, was the control was taken out of my hands. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to have to come out, or just, like, I was given no choice. I was like, okay, decision's been made for me. So I'm very like, make up my mind, boom, move on with it. And so came out, kind of resentful of the fact that I had to, but I'm like, it is what it is. And, I grew up in a pretty conservative background. I'm from Auckland, and, private schools and all that sort of stuff, and didn't know any gay people, and all my friends were straight. And I was just like, well, I just want life to continue on as per. This will be talked about once and once only, and then we'll just move on and we'll just won't really acknowledge it. And that's the kind of way I treated it for a long time. Like I hated the fact that I had to come out, and even now I feel like uncomfortable thinking about those feelings. And I guess people hear stories about, oh, you come out and it's liberating and it's freeing and you feel amazing. Well, that was just not the case for me. I came out and I still hated who I was and hated being the way that I was. And I think that the hard work came after that for me. But it was good hard work.
Yeah. And so how did your parents and your friends react, like, after you sort of laid it down?
Like, honestly, I was very, very lucky. Like, I didn't have any rejection or anything like that, nothing to my face. But at the same time, growing up, all boys schools, you hear how people talk about gay people and that sort of stuff. 90% of the time, it's just like banter, right? And I would participate in a lot of that, because it's light, it's funny, it's humor is often best when it's at the expense of somebody else. But, deep down I knew that there was a general lack of, I guess, acceptance or tolerance. And I knew that when I came out that I heard none of that. I was like, well, I know it's still there. So it just means that people either aren't saying it to my face, but they're just thinking it. And again, that's fine. Like, I'm a big believer in letting other people have their opinions and beliefs and things like that, because I've certainly got plenty of mine. But I was under no illusion that there'd been total acceptance. And I guess I was fine with that too, but it made me put up even more barriers to protect myself. Like, I think I would often, and I maybe still do to a degree, I would, in social settings, where there's a lot of like alpha energy and stuff. Like, I'm not an alpha personality, but a lot of the people I'm around are. So rather than waiting for, the not the gay bash, but somebody saying, oh, you're the queer guy, I'd always get in there first and make a self-deprecating or derogatory joke about myself first. So I was be like, so they couldn't get in there first. I could be in control of that and, get the first shot fired first and probably say something more shocking than they would, because I think, growing up, all the horrible things you say to yourself about yourself, they're much worse than what you've ever heard anyone else say about yourself. So I think if I could, put it out there first, then people would be like, whoa, well, he said it. I don't have to now, and I wouldn't have to hear it.
I find the
Weird
same with being
mechanisms.
Brown. Yeah. I used to be exactly the same with being brown.
Isn't it crazy?
I definitely have stopped in I think from about 30, I was like, I'm not going to accept this from anybody else. So I definitely can't be saying this shit to myself. So I made that conscious choice. But, I grew up in the 80s in West Auckland, and, the term gay was thrown around, same as the term, the N-word back in those days, all of that sort of stuff. And I think by about 30, I was like, oh, I've got to delete these types of ideologies, opinions, or types of jokes, because it's that Kiwi humor is fucking brutal, bro. Especially back in the 80s, it's different now.
Yeah, but it's also, it's brutal, but it's good, and it's real often, and hearing that sort of stuff, like, that's just the world, and it toughens you up, and you can either accept that it's out there, or you can run and hide from it, or you can just learn to face it and toughen up and let it run off your back. And that's what I choose to do. So, more often than not, when you hear people make jokes and things like that, they don't really intend to be hurtful. They're not hateful, bigoted people. That exists. But sometimes it's just like the boundaries blur, and you can choose whether you get really knocked around and hurt by it. But just for you, talking about the brown thing, was that because you didn't want to be your own ethnicity? Did you want to be somebody different? not the same experience, but it's like a general misalignment
Similar,
of
similar. Like
self, right?
I so my Samoan side, I just called myself a coconut, so other people wouldn't have the the pleasure.
Exactly
Um,
the same.
but when it was people calling me Maori, because I only found out, that I had Maori heritage at 19, I used to smash people as a kid, and like take real offence to it. And it wasn't till I was older that I was like, damn, I already knew. So now, I guess nowadays, I don't get the real outward racism, but I get the subtle racism. So I don't know if you experience that in the world as being gay, where sort of people might turn their nose up on you, or like, but a attitude.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. But I think we all have something, right? Like, well, most of us, if you're lucky enough, you have something. And I think, like you can, if somebody does meet you in life with those sorts of attitudes and they're not brave enough, but or dumb enough or whatever to come out with them, you can either be like offended and get your back up and yell at them and scream at them and call them a bigot or this or that, and that's fine. But you're not going to convince them to look at
no,
you differently by
yeah,
calling them a bad person. So you
yeah,
can
yeah,
like you can walk away, obviously, or you can receive it in a way that's like, let's open up the dialogue. I'll just show you who I am, and then you can maybe like change your opinion, because I think so much hatred comes out of, and fear comes out of just ignorance and not, having any experience from people. And sometimes you'll find that if somebody, for me anyway, is rude, or they hear that, they go, oh, you're gay, this and that, and they start having a conversation. They might be negative at the beginning. After a while, they're like, oh, you're not what I'd expect a gay person to be like. And, well, what would you expect? And they start asking questions, and they're like, well, I've never actually met a gay person. Or, and by the end of it, they're like your best mates. You don't have to be the
yeah.
same. You don't have to have changed their opinion, but they've got a different view of you. And I think that a lot of the time, a lot of the people I know who have gone through life and they might be, have none of the crosses to bear, like they're straight and they're white, all the things that we perceive as like the must-haves to have the perfect life, like you weren't comfortable being with your ethnicity, so you wanted to be something else. I didn't want to be gay. Maybe somebody grows up poor, they want to be rich. Like the people who grow up with all of the boxes ticked, they don't have any understanding of what it feels like to not fit in or to be on the other end of judgment. And so I think that they don't get the experience of growing empathy. And I'm really grateful for the fact of I didn't go through life with all the right boxes ticked, because I'd be a much harder, less forgiving person than I am now. And I can still be pretty tough and hard and judgmental, like very, and
We're going to get to
closed-minded.
that part.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that part shortly. We
But
we
it
we had
comes,
some good
yeah,
chats.
yeah, no, we will. But I think, when you've experienced being on the receiving end of that sort of stuff, it gives you a lot of empathy for people. Other people have too, and like your experience is very different to mine. But I can see on the same level how much hurt is in your eyes when you talk about it, and we felt the same things about different things, and that opens up connection between people. And I think I'm really grateful for that, because if I maybe wasn't gay and I was just bumping through life with no adversity, I'd be like, what are you whinging about? I'd have no understanding of what it feels like to not feel comfortable in your own skin, and what it takes to push through that and then get comfortable.
Yeah, man. Like for me, I think the ones, oh wow, you're really intelligent. Like, oh, thanks. When did you click onto that part? Or oh, you speak so eloquently is another one. I'm like,
What
fuck,
4A?
you need to listen, you
But
need to listen to me when
it's so
I'm around
telling.
my
Like
mates.
I love those sorts of comments. Like we were away at the beginning of the year with one of my oldest friends, husband and wife. They're both two of my oldest friends, and we had Christmas with them. Like, it was a really wonderful time, and we were sitting around one night, and they had their kids there, and my friend, her son was jumping around. He's like 8 or 9, and he was jumping around all excited. And she was like, "Oh my god, I hope he's not gay. I would die. I would kill myself if he's gay." And I was like, "Okay, that's cool." And she was like, "Do you think he is?" I was like, "I don't know. He's a fucking kid. Like, who gives a shit?"
Use your radar.
But for me, I was like, "Wow, that's just says so much about people's lack of awareness that they can sit there and say this to one they're, supposedly great friends and who you've shared experiences with and had a wonderful life with, and you allow them to be, around you. You're on holiday with them, right? Yet you'd be like, the worst thing for me would be if my child grew up to be like you, even if it's not their choice. And I was
Yeah.
like, I wasn't offended, I wasn't hurt. I was just like, wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Yes, I think I get more like, fuck, the audacity. And like, water off a duck's back, but it does make me question those sort of friendships for me personally.
Yeah, and
Um,
it makes you think, fuck, some people are so asleep, right? Like, to not even think that, if that's your opinion and that's what you feel, like, I can totally get that. But to not have any concept of the fact that the person you're saying it to might be like offended, or you
Deeply
might
offended.
be, you just have no concept of what you're saying is like directed at somebody who can't change the way that they are. It blows my mind.
Yeah, man. So I'm just gonna drop a memory, and then we'll move on from the subject, because my whole thing was your sexuality isn't what defines you, and I actually want to ask you a whole lot of other stuff. So, but because we were meant to do this yesterday, stuff come up. But as I was getting everything ready today to do this, I actually clicked and got reminded. Um, One of my biggest bullies at school, this dude used to kick me in the head, and he was a martial artist, and man, like his kicks used to, like, I'd feel it like throughout my body,
Yeah,
when he would, and it would just be like joking head kick. And he came out of the closet about 5 or 6 years ago,
yeah,
and sent me this massive apology, message. And he was like, "Oh, you know, sorry, I always wanted to be a dancer, but because of the schools we went to, like it was very alpha type school." He was like, "Oh, I didn't want anybody to know, so I just used my dance moves to kick you in the head because you were really feminine, and I was sort of angry that you could just be you."
yeah.
And then, like, I'm not going to name him, but I can guarantee you, after I drop this, there's going to be some people from my high school going, "Who is it? Who is it?" Because they wouldn't have
They'll
a
know.
clue. Nah. I guarantee you they won't, because he
Well,
was,
it'll be the
um,
jujitsu guy or the head kicker. They'll be like, oh, that guy.
nah. Like that. I think he just ostracized himself, so he lives offshore now, and his whole thing, like, he's quite outwardly gay. Like, he'll do lives and like, "Where the lady boys at?" Like,
Yeah,
he's gone completely, into his true self, and I think that's great. But I think the thing that I really appreciate the most was, I was in tune as a kid. I never would have picked that he was gay, but I definitely knew there was some reason he really didn't like me. But to have that, years later, and I think that was really cool to get that apology. But I think the coolest part for me is that he's unapologetically himself now, and I think that's the hardest thing to be in this world, is your true, authentic self. So, shout out to that guy if and when he watches this.
yeah. And
um,
it's like a prime example of somebody like that is clearly like, I always notice when you don't want to be associated with like growing up and you're gay and you don't want to be seen or outed or anything like that, the last thing you're going to do is be around, you know, gay, is be around gay people, right? So the easiest way to separate yourself from them is to be dismissive or abusive or like homophobic, right? Because it's like, well, if I'm homophobic, I clearly can't be gay. But it tends to be, I think, and I find the people who are most homophobic who are the ones who are like probably are gay. It's just it's almost like a given.
Yeah.
It's a big tell.
I'm going to take your word from it for it, but yeah, I've got a few people popping into my mind. So a part of what he had sort of said was the self-hatred that had come with it.
Yeah.
And so I hit you up a couple of weeks back when we did have a pre-chat, and I think one thing that I've got written down here is like hardened shell, and also like talking yourself down sometimes. And you gave me a really interesting answer. I'm not sure if you remember what that was.
Well, I think that self-deprecation goes back to what we were talking about before, right? It's about if you can get it out there first, then no one can say anything maybe that's worse, or they won't, that they won't even go to the point of getting that first slight in, right? So if you can self-deprecate yourself, then at least you have full control over it, rather than, if I say something horrible about myself, at least I can control it. But if somebody else says something awful, like I can't control the variables of what it is, and it might be something that rings so close to home that it fucking, it's a wound that pierces the armor, and the armor gets so strong and so tough, and a lot of it, like for me, like we going back to the podcast before, like we Matthew and I do our thing, and I think people who know Matthew would expect him to, and I don't talk about him too much, expect him to be like everything would be water off a duck's back, like impenetrable, right? Because he doesn't give a fuck. But it's interesting when it comes to, like, he's not on the social media side of things. Like, I'll read comments and he's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that, because he just doesn't want to hear anything negative about himself. But whereas for me, like, and I can put my hand on my heart, nothing touches the sides. Like, I think I've worked so hard at like creating this tough exterior that, people can say really horrible things about me, and a lot of it's appearance based or whatever, because I look kind of girly. But like, I genuinely find it funny, like nothing touches the sides, to the point where I sometimes think I built up such a tough exterior, even though physically I don't probably look like it, that nothing gets inside. And sometimes I'm like, I think I'm too tough. Like I've hardened myself so much that sometimes I don't even feel stuff. And I don't think that's a good thing.
I'd say a lot of it will be jealousy, bro. Like, you're a handsome dude, so I think that that will fuck with a lot of men.
But
And also, just to put it out there, you're also confident in who you are. Like, you come across that way. So I think that would rattle some blokey blokes as well. And I think this is just me personally, from working on you and Matthew and realizing where this connection and friendship has developed from, the fact that Matthew is one of your best mates and you're one of his, I think it's breaking fucking stigmas, man. And I really value that in you, but also in Matthew as well, because
it's good. And we don't think of it like that. We think it's weird that we're friends because not because it's a straight guy and a gay guy, or because his daughter's one of my best friends. Like, I'm effectively hanging out with my mate's dad, which is funny. But it's because we're like really kind of different. Like, he's, as I said before, he's alpha and he's loud and he's bullshitty, and I'm kind of quieter, but like steely and hard and kind of cold. And our worldviews can be really, really different, yet underneath, like, we're so similar, it's not funny. And I think for me, I don't care what people think about me, but I like the fact, and I genuinely don't like it. If I by choice probably wouldn't be out there putting myself in a public situation, but for Matthew, I really like the fact that people can see somebody like him who's done, he's been the sports person, then he's had TV shows, and he's been blokey, and he's always been his true self, but he's never got to show these other sides of these other facets that make up who he is. And I really like that. And I think it's really nice for people to see, particularly people who followed him, well, were fans of his or whatever previously, be like, oh, there's Matthew Ridge, He's exactly the same person who he always was, yet one of his great mates is this younger gay dude. They have a podcast. They talk about all this weird, fruity shit. It doesn't diminish his masculinity. He's no different.
Yeah.
He's not changed. I'm just learning more about who he is. And I think that's a really cool message. And maybe it's good for like people who are like me, who are gay or who aren't the alphas of the world, to see that just because you're like that doesn't mean you can't have a great mate who is one of those things, and you can't be around dominant, bolshy, aggressive, sometimes rude people. You know, like for me, I prefer to be around those sorts of people because they compliment me, right?
Yeah. Awesome. So I am excited so I get like little insights and stuff when I work on people, but I'm really excited for the future of not only the Brink, but, and this is something that you'll probably fight me on a little bit, but I actually felt like both you and Matthew will end up doing like, I guess, motivational speaking, and you're like, nope, not doing it in front of crowds, but I'm very like, and just not blowing my own trumpet, but very rarely am I wrong on this shit. And I really feel that. And so because one of the things I wanted to get into was all the political mess at the moment, because the government's doing a real fucking great job of division at the moment, and the LGBTQ peeps, the drag queens, all of that sort of stuff. So you've got pretty strong opinions on that sort of stuff, and I'd like to hear them if it's all right with you. But also, do you see yourself being, I guess, a person who could offer advice or support, or allowing people to really find their true, authentic voice?
God, I mean, I don't even know if I found my own true, authentic voice. You know, and that's only because like I change all the time. You know, like because of life experience, because of age, because of circumstance, because of so many things. And sometimes I'm like, am I even authentic because I'm so different to the person I was 5 years ago, a year ago, a week ago? And I don't know if there's something I'm learning, is that authenticity isn't necessarily a fixed thing, right? It's like an opinion. Like we've been told that once we commit to something, we stick to it. And if you backtrack on something you said, public figures or politicians, they backtrack on something they said, even 5 years ago, like, you're a hypocrite. Well, no, it's not. You've updated yourself. You've upgraded, and that for me, I don't know whether I could teach or give advice or anything like that, but I can share my view of the way I do life, whether it be of any help or not. And as far as the LGBT stuff goes, I've really interesting opinions on that. Like, not interesting, they're my opinions, and they're probably not correct. But first of all, I've never been a big part of that community, not because I feel like I'm above it or anything like that, but because I don't identify my sexuality as a particularly big part of who I am. Like, it's a really important core part, but it's like, I have about as much control over it as the color of my eyes, right? So I'm not going to spend all day, every day, sitting around obsessing about my sexuality. Therefore, I've not gone through life choosing my friend groups, my social groups, based on somebody's sexuality. That to me is really fucking weird. And like, if I'm going to sit around with a group of my friends and our underlying connection is that we're all gay or whatever, I'm like, it should be based on shit we find funny, things we find interesting. Even if it's like we're interested in politics, it's not because we all vote one way. It's because we're just interested in. I'd rather be around people who are different and bring, different viewpoints. So for me, I've never really sought that or moved in those circles. I've got heaps of gay friends, but they're my friends because they're funny or they're smart, they do interesting things, or they're just kind people or whatever. As far as like the LGBT, I said this to you the other day, I don't even know where all the letters stop and start, and I don't care. I don't even want to know. I don't think the T is trans, right? I don't think that should even fall under that umbrella, because as I understand it, again, this is just my understanding, when I hear people in interviews who are transgender talk about what makes them who they are, they say it's not about their sexuality. It's about, it's gender, which is totally different. So I'm like, well, surely the gay community is exclusively about sexuality and who you're attracted to. So like, why are you falling under that umbrella? That's fine. I think there's so much noise around it at the moment that it's kind of like, it's boring. And the more you force shit down people's throats, particularly people who are unaccustomed to being around that sort of thing, the more they're going to resent you for it. And the more, as I said earlier, the more you tell them you're wrong for not accepting it, the less they're going to accept it, right? So just get on with your life, and, and live it, and show people that you're just a normal, regular human being, nothing to be scared of, and then there will be much less division. That's what I think, right?
Yeah. I definitely feel like the government tries to, just anyway at the moment in New Zealand. I'm not sure if you keep up with the politics, but there was an attack on Māori, then attack on the rainbow community, now attack on women. It just seems like the pale, stale agenda is doubling down because, I guess people are coming out of their shells. So,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know anything. I've been out in New Zealand for quite a long time now, but so I don't know the ins and outs of all that. But in terms of the attack on the rainbow community, I feel like, I mean, that I don't even like the sound of that, rainbow community, but like, I feel like they're the last people who are getting kind of attacked at the moment. Like, gay and lesbian people are like less marginalized. They're the one, they tend to be the ones who are telling everyone else that they're bad or they're wrong or they're, you know, they're the ones doing the discriminating. And I just don't, I think the balance is totally unequal at the moment. Like, I'm really grateful for the fact that I grew up in an age where I can be gay and get married, and I don't really face prejudice on a day-to-day basis. And that's because I grew up in the West, and people before me fought for rights so that I can lead the life that I can, and I'm really grateful for that and aware of it. But at the same time, all this kind of like this militant rhetoric and this angry, entitled discourse that's out there about accept us as we are, no questions asked, or you're a bigot. I don't like that. Like, if we wanted equality, right? So having equality means you're equal. So just, we've got there, get on with life. The more you rant and rave, the more you ask for a gay month or, rainbows on your Starbucks coffee cups. That means that the more that makes you not equal, that makes you different, that makes you special, that makes you want to be separate or above, or maybe you think you're below. You want to be outside the fray. Like, I just want to get the fuck on with my life. Like, I'm equal. No one's completely equal in life, right? But I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I'm gay. And I think the more you hang on to that handle of being a victim or being marginalized or being, a disadvantaged minority, the more life's going to greet you with that. And the more you're just going to find that experience to be true. Whereas if you're just like, it is what it is, I can't change that, accept me or don't, but let's not make it exclusively about that. Just get on with life. I think the more you're going to find that life just kind of unfolds and rolls more smoothly.
Yeah, fair. All right, bro. So, didn't want to spend the whole episode talking about your sexuality, but we've gone through a big chunk.
Yep.
But actually, I think it's more that you're probably going to help a lot of people who are, I guess, who have family members who are gay or who are gay themselves, and trying to navigate the freedom in that, or coming out of the closet, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
From me, I work with people's spirit. So all of that aside, it's who you are as a core essence of your being that interests me, and that's more what I sort of wanted you to be on the podcast about. So you mentioned before about how you wish you got tapped on the head with the psychic stick.
I know that's such a
and
weird thing to say, but it's true.
and
So
I feel like you've probably been hit with the bat and haven't realized you might have a spiritual concussion, bro. So tell us about your ancestry as far as the heebie-jeebie stuff goes, and namely who came out from your session, I think, was your granddad. So
yeah,
tell us some spooky stuff, bro.
well, it's interesting, and I guess it's a lot kind of long-winded, but growing up in Auckland, I went to like a Presbyterian school. We went to church and that sort of stuff. And like not super religious, but it was just we'd go every Sunday and those sorts of things. And at school you have to do CE, which is Christian education or whatever it was. And growing up, this is boring, but going back to the gay thing, you'd hear about how this is wrong and that's wrong, and you can live your life like this, or you can't live your life like that, or you're going to go to hell, or you're going to go to heaven, or there's punishments for things that you're not even in control of. And I was like, this is really fucked and dogmatic, and I don't like rules at all, particularly. So for me, I went like for many years, I was just so anti-religion. Like if I would meet someone like a born again Christian or a young person who'd embraced religion, I would be horrible to them. Like worse than any person had been in terms of homophobia to me, like fucking rude, really, really rude and nasty. And I think I really, that was just my way of just coping with life, was to be tough and mean and horrible, because I felt little and weak on the inside. But more importantly, I think I really confused like organized religion with spirituality and just lumped it all in there. So anyone who was into anything like that must be a freak, effectively. Yeah. And then just before I stopped drinking, I was at a very, very, very low point in my life, and I kind of just, I just remember I don't even know why I brought this story up, but I remember being in the shower, getting up in the morning, and I was hungover, and everything was falling apart, and I kind of remember just like asking the ether just to help me, or just like, I was like, I knew I was going to die, and within like a week or two, I was in rehab, and then in rehab was an enormously pivotal moment in my life, and I loved it, and I had the best time, and I haven't drunk, as I said earlier, for 15 years, and I learned so much in there. But in rehab, they talk about, AA's all about like higher power and learning about higher power. At first, they talk about God, and I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, fuck that. I don't want anything to do with that, right? So I shut off. But then they talk about what a higher power can be, and it can be anything that's bigger than you, so whether it be family or maybe sport or the universe. I was like, that's quite freeing to think of, just that there's something out there that's bigger than you. It makes you feel kind of, I guess, small in a way that there's something out governing things, or there's something bigger to believe in, and that's quite freeing. So my understanding of higher power let me, I guess, look at other things more freely, like spirituality and things like that, which I'd always kind of been interested in, but discounted because of what I mentioned before. And so I started doing things like seeing the odd like spiritual healer, or maybe the odd clairvoyant and things like that, which was good and bad. But there was like a definite like opening of a door, that I was aware of the fact that there was maybe something bigger than just you're born, you die, you turn to dust, and there's blackness, which is what I thought for a long time and was really happy with. And then also my grandfather on my mum's side, who was Scottish, and he was like a union man, worked for BP, like a real working class guy, amazing man. Mum used to tell us these stories about how she'd wake up in the morning and come down to the kitchen table, and he'd have fallen asleep at the table, and there'd be sheets of paper with scribbles and writing all over them. And she'd ask them what it was all about, ask him what it was all about, and he'd say that he had an American Indian spirit guide. Remember, this is like, he was in Scotland and Wales, and, you know, no relation to that part of the world. And basically he was just scribing down all these things that the spirit guide was telling him. And he was so super attuned to the spiritual world. And when my grandmother died, he kind of didn't mourn her in a regular way because he was still kind of talking to her. So that for me was really, really interesting, to the point where I was like, I wish I was that attuned. So I went kind of to the absolute extreme opposite situation, where I was wanting nothing to do with it, to I want to know all about it, and I'm disappointed that I don't have the skill set to enjoy that.
Yeah, so I feel like you don't have it yet. Like I said, I'm pretty intuitive when it comes to this type of work, and I just feel like my honesty is like the walls you put up to the gay stuff real early on, and the religious stuff is probably what we need to just chisel away at.
Yeah.
Because, dude, I work with people in this realm every single day. We all have these gifts. We all have varying gifts, and I feel like since I last worked on Matthew, like, he's been sending me the odd message. He's like, I fucking feel the energy in my hands, bro. Like, he's
He
going
won't
apeshit
go on about it.
Yeah. So, but I feel like for you, it's more. I feel like you just need a bit of an in-person crash course, and you'll be sweet. So the funny thing for me is who you're talking about with the spiritual freak. That was me as a kid, and so and funnily enough, I do believe that why my gay friend who used to bully me was because I was spiritually in tune.
Yeah.
Which back in the days was looked at as feminine, and also because I tagged on a church which fucked a lot of people off. But and basically, like, I got kicked out of Catholic school at 5 years old.
That's a good
So
effort.
yeah, yeah, I didn't try too hard. I was just I've always been weird, and in tune. And I guess for me the funniest thing is like, I was telling the church people that they've got it all wrong, and that God's not this judgy old white dude in the sky with a big beard.
Yeah.
Like, it's energy, and it's loving, and it's nurturing, and it wants us to be happy. So yeah, I guess it's quite funny for me as well, is that we were both freaks in our own sort of way. And I think that's the thing now, is normal is, I guess, what we deemed normal back in the 80s is sort of boring and not true. So embracing that weird in yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think boring is like stupefyingly terrifying. Like, I'd hate to be normal, right? But you know, like, you learn and you grow. Like, I would have looked at somebody like you back in the day, because I think when you're spiritually attuned, you're open, and you're maybe more sensitive, and I would have interpreted that as weakness.
Yeah,
and
and most people
I would have wanted to knock that down, because I inside was feeling so small and so little and so weak. So to make myself feel bigger, my view of what makes a strong person is somebody who's rude and forthright and walks over people. And that's exactly what I would have done to somebody like that.
Yeah. And so what was your come to Jesus moment, bro? When did that change? And yeah, when did you decide that wasn't like who you truly are?
I think it was a drawn out process, and it was adversity and being kicked in life, and, you know, going through alcoholism, and still am, and losing things and losing people, and just, you know, like we all do, we go through shit. But I think when you do, you can either choose to wallow in it and be a victim of it, and life goes down that path, or you can be like, well, this is a really interesting experience. Let's grow from it and get stronger and go in that direction. And that's what I think I chose to do. And I think anyone can do that. But sometimes we're just not told the message that when shitty things happen to us, like they're actually a really great opportunity. And I think it's through adversity that I learnt what suffering feels like. And now when I see other people in a state of suffering, it might be for totally different reasons, part of me that would never have felt anything feels empathy now. And I really like that that's inside of me now, because I just think to, the person that I was that really didn't give much consideration to weakness or suffering or people without, I think, oh God, I'm so glad I'm not like that anymore. Like, I'm so glad that I'm the person that I am now, and that person who I am now could not be had I not gone through a lot of horrible things.
Yeah, that's beautiful, bro. And so, also interesting, like being an alcoholic, I don't call myself an alcoholic, but I've definitely been an alcoholic. I've been a drug addict. I've been womanizer, like all of those things early on. And like, it's funny, as far as that was the whole reason I wanted to own nightclubs, was because I was an alcoholic and I didn't want to get kicked out of my own clubs.
Really?
So I thought, yeah. And I still got kicked out of my own clubs.
Kind of genius.
Yeah. Fucking tragic. But that was also based around grief. I've really struggled in the past to deal with people dying. Like I lost my best friend to suicide at 15, and that was when I stopped getting bullied, because I was like, nah, fucking no more. Nobody's picking on me again. But when I had the nightclubs and my friend, she died in a car accident, and I was her sober driver for months. Like, because my thing is, when I start a new business, I give up everything and like focus 6 months to bring this dream to fruition. And then after the 6 months, I would like to say I reevaluate, but actually I've just gone boom and made up for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So, what was your poison? And because for me, there's that bartender side of me, or nightclub owner side of me, that what you drink or what your poison is says a lot about yourself.
Everything, like anything.
Oh fuck. Yeah. So no, like, this is my drink, I stick with this.
No, it fluctuated. I think an alcoholic you'll have a drink of preference. Like you'd start with a beer or or whatever. But at the end of the day, if there's only wine on the bench, you're going to go, well, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
So it would have absolutely been anything. And then I'd do things like you'd learn to, like I'd drink vodka for a long time, but then that would kind of keep you level. So I'd have a glass of like white wine, because that would make you a bit drunker, and then you'd moderate it up and down, and spirits, sambuca, tequila, like anything. I could drink whiskey at like 10 in the morning.
And so, how did you? I mean, obviously rehab. How do you? So I don't meet too many people that have not drunk for 15 years and still say they're an alcoholic. Like Danyan, Life After Meth, he was another one who sort of brought it to my attention. I would assume, and hopefully this doesn't make an ass out of both of us, but that you're quite a social person. So how do you deal with being in social settings and people drinking booze?
It's interesting. There's like a lot of luck, I think, because, well, just going back to your point earlier about still calling myself an alcoholic. Like, I know, for example, people often say to me, "Oh, why can't you just have one drink? It's been 15 years. Can't you just have one? Surely you've learned to moderate by now." But I know, like, not even in my deepest heart of hearts, I just know on a surface level, when I imagine I probably have a glass of rosé on a nice summer's day on the beach, And I know that as I'd be chugging that glass of wine, all I'd be thinking about was, I need to get through this first one so I can start the second one. Like, I wouldn't be necessarily caring about the flavor, the taste, the experience. I'd be like, how quickly can I get through this so I can start the next one? And then obviously the next one wouldn't be satisfying because I'd be waiting for the one after, and then there'd be no end. And that's just how I am with everything in life. So it's less about being alcoholic. It's more about being like deeply addictive by nature. And we're learning heaps about that on the podcast in terms of, external sources of soothing and why we do it and yada, yada. It's really interesting. And I think with things like meditation and things like that, that's really helping. But I'm always going to be an addict, and I'm always want to be an addict because it gives me enormous advantages in life too, because it makes me steadfast and determined and obsessive, and it's a superpower when it can be harnessed really well. But to your point about how I navigate being in social settings, what I found when I went to rehab was that people would leave and they just couldn't be around alcohol whatsoever. Like, it would have like a visceral reaction. They have a visceral reaction to being around it. Whereas me, I never had that, and that's pure luck, I think. Like, I had a group of friends, and who went through rehab, and we didn't want to sit around in cafes sipping coffee talking about, our experiences, because people who do that are fucking boring. We'd go to bars because we could be around it. You could sense the energy. Like, I love being around people when they're drinking because people's inhibitions come down, they relax. Like, they kind of come to the level I'm always at. And people aren't uptight. When I'm around people who are uptight and guarded, that stresses me the fuck out. And so when I'm around that, it's great. When it gets to 2 or 3 in the morning and people are slobbering and, slurring and falling over and repeating the same story over and over again, like, I will have a visceral reaction and I've got to get the fuck out of there. But I think a lot of it is just purely how I'm wired, and I'm lucky. But if I hadn't been like that, I would remove myself entirely. I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah. I was like that with smoking for a while, eh? I'd go hang out with smokers just to have that whiff.
And I get boring. That too. Yeah, it's you kind
conversations happen in the smoking area.
Yeah, well, and often, like, smokers are more interesting people, right? Because again, they're on the outside, they're forced outside, they're in their corners, they're huddling. Like, I don't know, like, people who choose to smoke or become addicted to smoking, it's because they're kind of like nervy or edgy, or like, they're always on the go. They may be a bit ADHD. Like, I don't know, for some reason I gravitate towards people who are more like that.
Yeah, no, awesome. So I'm gonna come over to France at some stage, bro. Like, it's on the cards. You live not too far away from my uncle Polder's 10-meter limestone sculpture in a place called Le Pidier, is, I think, how you pronounce it. I'm probably wrong.
I'm not. How do you spell it? I won't know.
LES.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
I sent you the thing, but I've got no idea. I've heard it said like 3 different ways. I'm sure it's Le Pidier. But it's basically a massive limestone area, and there's I think 180 artists from all around the world, and he's carved the biggest carving there in like a cave system on 10 meters of limestone and with little trickles of flint through it, and he's carved the story of Henenui Te Po, or the goddess of death, or the underworld. So I definitely will be in France, in south of France, at some stage really soon. Working on that. We've
discussed it. We're going to do a road trip, because that would be amazing to do that. I'd love to see it, and to do it with a descendant of the artist. We'll do it. Come stay. So
it's said that the medicine and the carving that we both have come from the same ancestor, and his name was Riwai Pakiro. So
yeah, you mentioned him before. Okay, yeah, cool.
So definitely keen, but also I feel like I need to host a couple of workshops over there, and I feel like we can tap into. It was really apparent to me because your granddad was throughout your session that he wants to help open that up to you.
Yeah, that'd be
So
nice.
that's definitely ready to bring you into another weirdo space.
Hey, this is
But
this is just me wanting to ask you a question that when you were saying before about how you had real issue with losing people and death and stuff like that, I found that really interesting um because for somebody who growing up was so attuned spiritually, I would have thought you'd have had an understanding of maybe what happens next, or like the death is not the end. So maybe you would have been more at peace with that. Why is I'm just being nosy. Why
yeah,
were you not?
the understanding has always been there. I miss the physical, like
Yeah,
physically miss my best friend. Like he's around all the time. Whenever I tune in to get a reading from a psychic, he'll be there at like 7 a.m, like knocking on their spiritual door. Like, is he ready yet? Are we there? When like, and I'll get a message. It's like I would say 10 out of the last 10 readings I've had, I'll get a message at the start of the day. Your friends are already here. Your people are already here, and it's my mate. But even when he was alive, we didn't have cell phones back then. So he'd be like, I'll be here at this time. And he would show up and be there an hour early so that he didn't miss me,
yeah,
you know? So I know that he's still energetic in spirit, but I physically miss shaking his hand with
yeah,
my friend Tash. I physically miss having a laugh with her. And with my nan, I physically miss being able to go and give her a hug. So,
yeah.
and when I say I struggled with grief, this was pre this work.
Got
Like
it.
I was still spiritually in tune, but I was so not many people know this about me, but I actually took my life pretty soon after my friend took his with the same bandage, and I got brought back to life.
Really?
So I've experienced, I guess, near-death experience isn't really the right description for it because I was gone. I'd left my body. My friends had to bring me back.
Do you remember
But
this?
yeah, oh, 100%. Bro, it was this the scariest shit of my life, and I was dead.
Oh,
And so I was floating without a body. So I was consciousness, but I was still in like my body of a bubble. But there was this thing underneath me, and there was no light. And I was like, I was screaming, and it's like when you close your eyes down and you scream in your head. I was screaming like, "Let me out!" I was like trying to claw, trying to swim, and I was just in darkness. But I knew there was something underneath me that was coming to like devour me, and I was like, "No shit!" I was screaming, "Help! Help!" And then when my friends had given me CPR and like brought me back to life. And when my heart started again, I like fell upwards into my body. So I guess from that moment of coming back, um, like I realize now the reason there was no light is because I had no light. You
yeah.
know, my friend had just died. I was ready to go. We'd made a pact when we were 15, that if we weren't married by 21, we were both going to jump off Lion Rock. Like that was our outcasty mindset as teenagers. So
Because that, like, hearing that makes me like that fills me with dread. Like, because that sounds like a borderline, like cusp of hell experience. Like, is that what it felt like, or
yeah, but from doing the spiritual work, and like this is a whole nother podcast sort of episode, but one of my friends, he got taken by a taniwha, which is a mythical creature. But I had instances where he had come and visit through a psychic medium, while I was working on her. She was an Indian woman. Her whole face turned into like my white mate. I didn't
Mm.
even know he was missing. And then before like there was the spiritual mission of having to deliver a green stone to this taniwha, this monster in Lake Taupo, to get his bones back for his family to get closure. So after that, I realized that so I think suicide and death are very different things.
Mm.
And like I've helped people cross over quite a few times with my work, and I do believe that once people cross over, depending on how they die, there is more learning for them. But I do believe that there's a lot more learning for you if you have taken your own life. And so for me, when I talk about grieving, and I really struggled with that, it was actually the physicality. And after I took my own life and my friends brought me back, I've had a real big thing of like trying to help people before they get to the suicide thing, because I'd never ever want to experience that again.
Yeah.
You know, and when shit gets hard, and trust me, you know, I've still had challenges in my life where my mind will go like ponder that for a second and then remember, and it scared me enough to like, nah, I don't want to go that way. I would, you know, I already know how I'd like to leave, and it's when I'm old and you know,
Yeah.
in a rocking chair with my wife at the same time, sort of thing. Like,
It's really good hearing
but
that. It
yeah,
makes me sad to think of people I know and love who've done that, who've chosen to do that. And
there is redemption, brother. I 100% believe that, because the other thing is I believe my friend has he has changed on the other side, but also like every psychic that, you know, he's there knocking on the door, but every psychic has told me that he's learning through my life,
yeah,
like vicariously in a sense.
yeah,
And recently, when I was going through another really, really tough time in my life, I had to climb the Southern Alps. This was my thing of like do something extremely difficult to get a higher perspective. And he visits me all the time. Whenever, you know, it's sort of it's like talking to him on the phone. But at the top of this mountain, he had visited me, and it was actually more of he had become a 44-year-old man ghost. So it
well,
wasn't this 16-year-old like let's do dumb shit. It was yeah, and he asked me when I get back down off that mountain to go and be the lead in this play around suicide awareness. So, you know,
so you don't
um,
get the sense that I don't know why I feel like I've got to ask these questions. You don't get the sense that he's been like
banished.
in punishment. Yeah,
No, and I do believe that at some stage he'll come back, in reincarnation
ugh,
type of thing.
fuck that. Life's hard enough one time around, you know?
Yeah. Well, like I
That's
think
a
that's the
really,
thing. Or he might not have to if he's learnt enough. Like I believe that the only thing that's different is the physical nature of the world. Because I believe once we cross over, there's a whole lot more learning.
yeah.
Um,
We were chatting the other
and
day, Matt and I were chatting, and you know, there's that saying, oh, shit happens and then you die. I was like, shit happens and then you live. Like,
yeah, yeah,
that's worse.
yeah. But I do like the cynical side of you, bro. Like it definitely piques my humor. Um, but yeah,
I say it
and
tongue in
also
cheek, but it's true, right? You gotta fucking push
yeah,
through. I'm like, oh, I hope I learn my lessons because I don't want to fucking come back. I don't. That would be for me is
100%.
like a really like a lifelong scary thought of is reincarnation. I'm like, I don't want to come back. I'd rather be nothing.
Okay, so we've got to sort out this spiritual evolution, bro. We'll get there. And this is the whole reason why I'm on the journey as well, is because I would like to not be crucified this time, but also to maybe evolve, so I don't have to.
Yeah,
But that's all another podcast.
I know.
Brother, I also just want to say, like, I love the way you just flipped that and became the host.
No, I didn't. I didn't.
You did.
I was just interested. I should have asked you afterwards, but I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, I just want to know.
No, that's awesome, bro. Like, you're actually a big inspiration for me, and Matthew as well. Don't get me wrong, but I know that you're doing the behind the scenes, the editing, the all of the stuff, and I'm real excited for where you guys take this,
Thanks.
and really grateful that. You've just spent an hour and 21 minutes on this podcast with me, bro. So
No,
thank you very
I
much,
just felt
David.
like having a chat with a friend. I love it. I love spending time with you.
Yeah,
So thank you so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Thank you.
And we're definitely going to do a roadie, you, me, and Matthew over in France. You're going to show me around. I've
Oh,
already decided.
you might regret this decision.
Well, you don't drink, so it can't get too messy, bro.
Well, it's not about getting messy. It's just about fucking batshit crazy. But anyway, he doesn't
Oh,
drink
dude.
either. No, we don't do anything.
Yeah, yeah. Like, so it'll be like just funny, and
It won't be
um,
boring.
I don't think it will be boring, and this is why I'm keen. But yeah, I think it's one thing with traveling around the different countries. Um, it's always awesome when you have somebody who's there who lives and breathes it.
Yeah, we'll show you
You
around.
know, yeah, no, definitely, bro. So, thank you very much, David. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so
For
much.
anybody who ends up listening to this and hasn't subscribed, liked, and followed the Brink, go and do it now.
Yeah, and if you got this
Yeah,
far, what is wrong with you?
fuck, man. I think, yeah, this one's got some boom moments, so I like it.
Oh,
FTP, free the
thank you
people.
so
So,
much.
lastly, before we go, I ask this to everyone. So, what is your, and I know you don't really want to give advice, but what are ways that you could offer for somebody who is feeling trapped in themselves, in life, in the system? What's just something that you would offer for someone to free themselves that has worked for you?
This is going to sound silly, but like exercise for the mind and
Yep.
body, so
Cool.
much so. Like if I don't exercise, I do 6 days a week. So, I haven't for the last 2 days because of various commitments, and I feel sluggish and slow and flat. Exercise is enormous for that, for the mind first and foremost. And then I think the other thing is education. And I think of education as, might be interesting podcast you're into, reading a book, talking to someone who's different to you, exchanging opinions, and like, you know, learning about other people's stories, about other people's suffering, perspective. AA for me, going through all of that, a lot of it's about realizing that other people's lives are way shittier than yours, and it's a really horrible way to feel good about yourself. But that is the foundation of how it kind of works. It really is,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that's a huge part of making yourself feel better. Or you don't know what you don't know, right? So the more you learn about things, the more you can find other ways to pull yourself out of where you're at. Yeah, I'm still not there. I'm still pulling myself out,
Yeah,
and I'm always gonna
it's
be, and that's fine.
same, bro. It's evolution, man. We're always
Yeah,
growing, eh?
like it would be boring to get to the top and be like, I've done everything, I'm fixed. Then
Yeah,
you'd want to kill
yeah.
yourself, like, right? Like you
Uh,
would.
yeah. You're such a crack up, bro. Again, David, thank you. You've been amazing, bro. You're a crack up. And yeah, look forward to catching up in person. And
Yeah,
thank you.
you're so welcome. Thank you so much.
Awesome, bro. All right. Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
mate.
For those listening, and check out the Brink. Awesome.